Live again. So I'm gonna do something that's a little different. This is gonna be like a full-blown patch review. Hopefully you can kind of see with my light. And of course, whenever I want to do something, there's ads everywhere. So are you ready for the world of ads and replaying videos that you don't want? Welcome to now. But let's get back to it. Um, so based on a suggestion, I have a really good patch that I don't necessarily want to take apart, but I will, just because I got to change it up all the time. And so I was I asked if anyone had suggestions, and a friend, Leslie, said that he was curious if I could show what I'm working on right now. And so I'm going to do that and do my best that I can to really reiterate this workflow. But let me just show you just some of the cool patterns we can do first that I have going on. A lot of the patches I've done as of late, which is around like late November. I almost said Thanksgiving. Oh my God. Late November 2017 to around December. It's pretty much been this patch. So yeah, you can see again some really unique shapes. So a lot of what I'm doing. So let's just start completely back to front. So um, I guess that's the best way of doing that. So really, so usually I always have, and you can kind of see it here, but I'm always using the mapper to condition what I'm doing on the out. So what I have for the mapper right now, I have the RG and B. So B is going to B, we have G going to R, and we have R going to R going to B. That is from the mapper to my cadet, and then I also have the V going to the B of my cadet. So let's just start from there. Next, I do the same thing like I had done in other videos, which is use the two quads right here, which you can't really see because they're heavily covered, as main buses, you could say. So I have, let's start with the green one, which is going into the Y input of my color space mapper. So, and it's this one right here. So what I have going into that is pretty interesting. I have a prismatic ray, which is being modulated by several sources. I guess we'll just get to those. We'll just go through this and then we'll start exploring those. So prismatic ray on the 4 channel, so you can kind of see it there, and then if I modulate it you can kind of see that. So next we then have in channel 3 we have the out of the mixer, or no, it's the fader right here, which is actually a mix of the stencil from the shapeshifter, and also the other channel is the square wave from the same prismatic ray right there. Next, in channel 2, we have the staircase, which the input of that staircase is, if I can trace that properly, that'd be really, really nice, is the mixer right here. So, and what's being mixed is the shape changer V and the shape changer H. They're being mixed together and being brought out into the staircase, which you can see right here. Bam, which is really, really cool in my opinion. I think shape changer and staircase are beautiful together. Really good mix. See, look at that. Really cool color definition. You can get a lot of different things. So that, oh, sorry, one more. And this channel 1 of this bus, which is going into Y, which is the triple video filter that I have here. What is actually coming from there is actually the same prismatic ray. As you can see, I'm using one prismatic ray for a fair amount of inputs, and I've done that as a good way, like even though if you get the same waveform, or not waveform, but the same, frequency, and it's the same type of frequency across the board but different waveforms, you can still do some unique stuff if you filter them a certain way. And that's kind of what I'm doing here. I do that, I wouldn't say a lot, but it's how you can get a lot of extension out of a 2 or 3 oscillator system. And I'm taking the OLN from the triple video multi-mode filter and into channel 1 of this quad mixer. So let's continue. This next quad mixer, bam, right next to it, which is going into the S of the color space mapper, right? That is actually this prismatic ray over here. So you can see that kind of controls this cool shape. This little bend. Yeah. See, that's the type of stuff, and then you modulate this, this prismatic ray, and you get some really, yeah, as you're seeing right now. Really cool stuff. Then, and that's channel 4 of that quad mixer. Now we're going to go into see what the channel 3 is, which is actually this waveform generator all the way over here. Usually I've been doing it with only 2 prismatic rays and not another oscillator, but sometimes in the smaller case, if I want a little more synthesis, I'll just throw in another waveform generator. And so the sine wave, which is right here, which also has a modulation in from the gradient of the shape changer. I'll get to all the modulation points afterwards, but let's just do the flow first. So the sine wave is going into channel 3 of this mixer. Next, so you can, it's subtle. Yeah, so you can see it's fairly subtle. And then into channel 2 is, so let's trace it, blah blah blah, is actually, and trace this, is divisions. So I threw a divisions, the number 1 out of divisions into, oh no, sorry, oh no, yeah, that's it. No, let's see. My brain is just catching me right here. Yeah, see, I'm catching myself. It's easy to get lost in these chords. So, okay, so that's where it's coming from. Okay, that's what I thought. So it's really an LFO that's going into channel 2 right here. So let me just show you. So you can see it's just more like the subtlety of it. And what I mean that is, like, it's not necessarily changing the movement, but you're changing the inner color depth of it by modulating a different. I mean, you're modulating so many different colors, but see, as you can see that green going in and out, that's what I'm talking about. Is you're actually modulating the colors within the color, and so you have a little more control of depth of field and also just color scope. And then lastly, on channel 1, we have, let's see, it's another triple video input, and so we have the middle filter. I'm pretty sure that was, it's not the, it's the bandpass. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the bandpass. Please correct me. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm kind of tired right now. That's from the same channel 1 that we had before, that was coming from this prismatic ray. So again, this prismatic ray going into channel 1 of the filter, and we have the bandpass going into channel 1 of the quad mixer, right? So lastly, we are now talking about H. And H is kind of interesting because I did something definitely atypical. Is like, usually I'll try to do the staircase into that, something more complex. But what I decided to do was actually do channel 3 of the video filter, and then the input was actually the mixer as well, which was from the shape changer, which is really cool because you can start. This is why you can see this awesome little gradient change with a little pink, little purplish, and then if I mess with the mapper, you'll be able to see it's, yeah, that line right there that I can bring in and have a little more subtle. And obviously it's modulating, so you can't see it that much, but you see, you get the idea. Essentially, it's just another subtle layer. Yeah, you can kind of see it better there. And so, yeah, I have a little more control of it, and that's a really cool thing. You can then modulate. So those are the main ends that are going on, and that's pretty much the entire flow in terms of general workflow. But next, let's go through each module and explain their modulation points. And also their other auxiliary connections, such as the ramps and where the navigator's going and stuff like that. So we'll just start from the left. So let me bring this down so it's really slow so we don't notice it. So next I'm going to use a waveform generator, which you can see is one of the vertical lines. And so I actually have one from the staircase going into the FM1, and then I have a ramps, which is negative on this side, positive on this side, going into the other side of the modulation points. And so why that's good is because I can get this little ripple, this little break apart. You can't be too drastic because you can actually make it look really noisy like this, you know, which is its own aesthetic. It is really cool in its own right. But what I find the best of the double modulation point is this, is that you can throw in a ramps and then you have something else such as a staircase in there, and you can start to get these really unique bends and shapes which become great layering objects to work around or work with. And as you can see, as and I'm more of a fan of, at least for me, in this patch, it changes every patch. So there's a lot of vertical lines. I like having like one or two, and then you can get things like that. As in this bend, see how, yeah, like that. Excuse me. So next, we'll show what we're talking about is a sine on the same waveform generator. Sorry for the bumps, this is a thing with the cables. That's coming out from the gradient of the shape changer. So if I move the shape changer, it's going to be controlling several things, but it's also controlling this gradient right here. And you can see the good control with the gradient, what you can actually really do with depth. Like, look at that. That is really choice. So that's something that I've found a lot that I've really liked, is using the gradient as a modulation source and using the stencil as like an extra coloring device, kind of like the multi-mode filter. Right now, yeah, it's a little too... This is the one thing with the shape changer. It gets a little frustrating. It's like it's really... Oh, there goes my paper. That was diffusing my world for you. So let me fix that really quick. Sorry about that, everyone. This is the hiccups of real life. So, now we're back. What can be tough with the shape changer is it's like you modulate, but it's almost like it overmodulates, and then it starts breaking up. And like, that's cool. It can work. It can be something that can really work in some devices, and some it doesn't. And I love that module. I think I'm totally just buying time as I fix this, but I love that module. I think it's definitely a paramount keystone module to have. But it's something you have to really work with it and be really attuned with what's going on with it, or maybe it's just mine. I'd like to hear other people's opinions on that. But if like you overscale it or go past the width when you're modulating it, it can really break up a little bit. Otherwise, you get stuff like this, like what's happening right now. That's what I love, is these really small micro movements as if it's water, or floaters in your eyes after, being sleep deprived for 4 days. And when everything seems real, when everything may not be, or is it? I don't know. You tell me. So let me try to push this up a little more. There we go. So, okay, so let's go to the next video, or not video, next module, and we'll work our way through top row, bottom row. Next one, navigator. Thank you for the patience. So what we have is the center positive, two sides negative ramps going into the navigator, plus in one channel right here, plus another ramps which is positive, negative, going into the horizontal, and then into the vertical I have negative, positive. The reasoning for that is to create more complex shapes that are more bent. So instead of it being something like a line that you're twisting, this is more like a jagged, sharp end that you can then control a little more once you start routing into the shape changer. So as you can see, maybe you'll see a little, but there's just by doing this with the multiple ramps, which I suggest if they're, this is, in my view, is like one of the most coveted modules, just because of the flexibility of what you can do. The utility is just endlessly perfect. And then with the shape changer, after it's going through the navigator, you can do a lot like that. Like, look at that. That is magnificent. And so, yeah, this is what I mean when you have the angle. So you have a straight line, and it's bent a little, but then you're coming down, and you can play with that a little more. This little jagged edge is really what I'm looking into. So now we're going from, because that was just the ramps of the navigator, pretty simple, not modulated. I don't often modulate the navigator. Shape changer. It's just going straight, H to H, V to V. Great. We've already talked where the stencil goes, where the gradient goes, where the H and V go, but let's talk about the modulation points. So next we have the size VC, which is actually coming from this prismatic ray. So almost in this system I'm using like one ray as like a pure oscillating system, and or oscillation unit, and then the other one I'm really using is like a voltage control unit that is being voltage controlled too. So it's kind of like it's in its own feedback loop. And so as you can see, you know, you can get some really complex shapes with that right in the size, but I also have the skew, which is being modulated by this waveform generator here. So, and because I'm just over modulating it, but you can see you have to play a little bit with it to try to get something that works, like that edge. It's a dance at that point of really playing with it for a long period of time to try to get what you want. And but as you can see, even in a subtle movement, that you can see the amount of complexity that just gets added. So this is just the one prismatic ray that's modulating the VC or size VC, and then just adding this other one right there. That's what, now we're talking about goo. That's some type of golden goo that I don't know where it came from, some other dimension, and it's just trying to tell me something. I don't know what. Maybe it's a currency. Maybe it's, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just a mind goo, and it's just going to take me over. Wouldn't be opposed to it, but we'll just keep going. So next we have this other, so that, or, well, that's pretty much the shape changer at that point. And now we're going from the shape changer horizontal, which I talked about beforehand, which went to the mixer, so it's into the mixer part of the bridge. I just mixed the H and B's together. Next, let's talk about this prismatic ray that we had here, which is another vertical. It's just giving more dynamics to it. And you can see right there. So a lot of it's doing things like this where you can completely block out other sections. And again, that's really good to develop a complex composition. And so what I have going into there for the pedestal, I have again this other waveform generator, but I have, what is this? The triangle wave going into the pedestal, which you can see there. And then I have the frequency modulation being done by the divisions. Why that is good, in my opinion, is it allows you to segment, so you can see how it's kind of segmenting the screen and or the shapes a little bit. And in my view, this is again one of the most powerful modules because it allows you to design the shape and thus also make the shape act as its own barrier. And what I mean by that, I'm going to try to get it right now if I can tune things a little bit, because these are a little wild right now, so wild. Let's see. Yeah, so this is what I mean. So you can kind of see how it's split, right? So let's just see if I can play with the mapper a little bit to define it. No, I should have just went back. I'm in a weird color scope now. Okay. So there we go. Okay. So this is why it's good, is like now we have completely two different sections of the video. They're doing two completely different things, but you can then use, if you have enough, you can use the pedestal and the multiply as a way to kind of blur the lines, so you could see the frequency modulation have control of how many lines I'm getting. And then in this other module over here, which is controlling the overall, you can kind of, you know, blur it a little bit, like that black panel, how it's just kind of blurred into a depth or a depth of field section. So it looks a little deeper, and now the modulation is making it brighter. And it doesn't even look like that side sectioned off. But when you think about the complexity of it long term, so let me try different divisions just to mess with you. So you can do things like that, and you can imagine if you had different scrolling modulation parts and stuff like that, plus playing with the pedestal multiple modules, you can get to really be a complex moving shape. And then next we have the multiply, which is actually going from the third channel of the video mixer, which originally was coming from the mixer of the shape changer. So we're using that as a way to mess with the multiply. So you see a lot of it's just like these little feedback systems in on themselves to make it more complex. And I found that's like the biggest thing with a lot of this is like you can have a lot of modules, which is great. I mean, I encourage people to have all different setups, you know, have big, small, travel, non-travel, just try everything to explore. It's so new, it's so flexible. And so the whole point is, if you even just had two prismatic rays and you just keep modulating back and forth with a bridge somehow and then some mults, like, you can get a lot of cool stuff. That's a cool shape right there. But now I'm getting sidetracked. So we're now checking on this last modulation point, this frequency modulation of this prismatic ray right here. And so that is actually being modulated by this LFO. And I'm pretty sure, yeah, I'm getting a lot of noise somewhere, but that's, this is what happens. There's somewhere in the chain, there's some significant noise. Yeah, see, it's really not that much. It's more just like being attuned to it. See, that's what I mean right there. That scoop is by having the multiple ramps, getting things like that, and then being able to shrink them and playing with the shadowing like that. But now I'm sidetracked. We're going to get back to this one right here. So the frequency modulation, as you can see, plays a big hand in this. I'm kind of losing the patch a little bit, but it's still there. We'll get back to it shortly. So that's the top row right there. Next, let's go through the bottom row. We've already discussed some of these ramps which go into the navigator, but we have one over here that isn't, which is the top negative, bottom positive. That's going into this VC of the first row of this triple video filter. And you can kind of see, let me just take it out. It's a subtle shift, so let me do it like that, and you can see it's really harder, but it provides a awesome angle which makes that little sliver come off, which to me is really, really, really essential. See, just a twist of the knob and you get amazing things out of this machine. I am so amazed all the time of the things that happen with this stuff. So next, oh, that's why it was all crazy. It's just I had the modulation way up. That is really cool, whatever just popped up. I'm just going to sit back for a second and sip on my seltz. Because I really like that. That is a beautiful composition. So let's continue. So we just talked about that last available ramps, right? Well, we haven't really talked about LFOs here yet. Now we will. So we've already talked about the bottom one, which is going to this part of the bridge, and it's multed out to a few different ones. And a big key, someone was asking, how do you get it so slow when you only have the brown shoes only? Well, I've found kind of a way with the multiply on the bridge. If you play with that and you have the triple video really low, and then you also play with the frequency of a prismatic ray, and you open it up wide, you can get some really interesting stuff. And what I mean open it up wide is like put it all the way to the left or right. And when you do that, it's just completely open. So any VCs can control that whole span. So thus, if you have a really complex waveform, and then you can use the multiply to then decrease the intensity of the waveform of the LFO, for some reason it seems to work slower. I mean, there may be something else to it I'm just not understanding yet, but every time I've worked with that confines, it's somehow made it slower. I don't know. It's black magic. That's all I know. So let's go back to it. This LFO, thanks for listening to Ramblin'. It goes to this other mult, which only has one out, which goes to the VC of the third row of the voltage control, the voltage control third row of the filter. So let me just show you that. You can see if I'm on the filter and I open up the VC, close it, you can see how it's changing it, which is pretty cool. So even if I increased it, you can see it has a little more subtlety to it, but I want it kind of slow. Next, this last one is the LFO is going into the staircase phase, like that, but I have it really slow. This is how I'm doing kind of things fading in and out. This is, again, layering of the LFOs in different ways with ramps involved, too, like that. You can actually play with the subtlety of different panes coming in and out of view, and once you start layering the multiple slow oscillators, you get some really, really dynamic imagery, which is slowly evolving and really evolving uniquely. I mean, you can do shots of 10 minutes and still get new patterns, which is absolutely amazing. Wow, it totally almost blew through a whole half hour right now. That just blew my mind. So we're still going. Next, so we've already covered all that. Next, we've already talked about the channel 1 and channel 2 of the video multimode filter. Next we're going to talk about, or channel 3, sorry. Now we're going to talk about channel 2. What channel 2 is actually a waveform from the prismatic array here going into channel 2. And sometimes you can't really see it, and this is something I've noticed is sometimes, like anything, when you get really deep in this stuff, you can easily work on designs that you then are like, how'd this even happen, in terms of where is it in the patch. And this is kind of one of those situations where I can't necessarily tell where it is, but you can see there is a difference occurring. And let me just play with that. Yeah, so I just increased the multiply on that, and so let's see. Yeah, it's one of those things. I won't lie. I mean, I don't know necessarily where it's going at the moment, but I had it as something. Hold on a second. That. Yeah, sorry about that. I had it as something that I was going to try to involve more, but I can't really tell where it's occurring in the patch. And then sometimes I do see it pop up, so I'll mess with the patch for a little bit afterwards and see if I can have it pop up. But essentially I just had the output of that going as a VC, so it really wasn't like super complex or anything. It's just more so to play with a way to make the signal a little more complex of the fader, which actually I think I jumped over. I very much did. So that's just going the fader. So at that point I'm going to go the bridge because I jumped over like a fool. We're going to take what the fader's doing. It's taking the stencil in channel A, and then channel B is actually a square wave from this prismatic array and mixing them together. And then the VC is from channel 2 of the triple video filter. Next, in the mixer, as I've explained, we already know is a shape changer. But the VC of that, we don't have any. So there you go. Next, because I've already discussed the other aspects of it earlier in the patch, please refer back. Next, we have the staircase, which going into the staircase, just to reiterate, let's see, was the output of the mix of the shape changer. Bam. We've talked about the 2 modulation points. The main out, as we've already explained, goes to the quad mixer. One of the outs goes to the waveform generator, CV, and then another one goes to channel 2, the video filter, CV. At this point, it looks like we've covered everything. It's kind of a blur right now, but it's all there. So let me really quickly tune the patch to something that could really be cool, like that. Bam, bam. There's so much you can do when you get. Obviously, it's a complex patch, but you can see why, in a way, it's when you get to places like this, it's like, do I then remove it or do I milk it? And I've milked it for a period of time, and then what I usually do is make a patch. I'll sit with it for a couple days, maybe. It really depends. Sometimes it's just a day or a couple hours, and then I'll milk it and then try to get as many recordings as I can out of it. But in this case, this one's been pretty exceptional, and I really enjoy where it's been going. And creating a lot of organic imagery like this and the shadowing imagery. So I've kept it. But I mean, even with a few twists, you're getting these really, really nice golds, orange. Well, you can't see the orange now. I've had it earlier, but golds, the pinks, the subtle pink, and how it's just slowly evolving with the shadowing. And these type of ways, especially the shape changer and the multiple ramps going into the navigator, shape changing it and then sieving the skew and things like that. And especially trying to find pathways with the staircase to modulate. Really good ways to create these complex patterns. And at this point, I think we're pretty much at the end of this video, and if you have any questions, feel free to message me. But in general, thank you for watching, and keep patching, and enjoy.